Piccadilly Circus, Trafalgar Square, the stores, the theatres, the museums, the parks, and a great deal more.
For those of you who are looking for a more personal touch, why not try a tour behind the wheel of one of those famous black taxis? That's where you'll find some of the best guides in London.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to London. London is a place of 2 cities and many villages.
Drivers like John Beechand are courteous and have passed a rigorous test to learn the ins and outs of their city.
Over on your right-hand side is the Houses of Parliament, with the famous Big Ben, the great big clock tower by the side of it. Would you believe that the minute hand of Big Ben is 14 foot long?
The clock stands perched on a 320-foot tower, which dates back to 1840. Next to Big Ben stands the stronghold of Britain's democracy, the Houses of Parliament.
Houses of Parliament themselves are where the 650 or so members of Parliament meet to discuss the great issues of the country. Coming up now, the house with the most famous facade in London, Buckingham Palace. Come here at 11:30 in the morning and you'll be able to see the guard change, one of the most spectacular scenes in London, full of pomp and pageantry.
Dressed in towering bearskin hats and red tunics, the guards follow ceremony in front of thousands every day.
We're now coming into Trafalgar Square, which is our memorial to our naval heroes.
It quickly becomes obvious how much there is to see in London, but at the same time, there are even more ways to see those sights. Some are more traditional, others provide a splashing change.
On the left-hand side, the Tower of London.
Consider touring aboard a luxury barge heading down the 215-mile River Thames.
It's got to be one of the finest ways of seeing London, because you can appreciate it from the tranquility of the river.
Built in 1892, this Victorian cruise hotel will accommodate up to 12, and the Captain Web affords the opportunity to see familiar sights at not-so-familiar angles. Consider this famous bridge. It may look like the London Bridge, but it's known as the Tower Bridge, and it dates back to the turn of the century. It's just one of at least 20 bridges that span the River Thames, and as you pass under each, your flag proudly waves outside the Captain Web. Aboard the Captain Web or on land, it's a wonder anyone can keep up with all London has to offer. Yet everyone seems to have a favorite.
British Museum. Winston Churchill, the War Museum was excellent.
Seeing Les Miserables in the English theatre.
It's all wonderful. I just don't know how you'd ever pick a favorite part.
And at the end of a busy day of sightseeing, this is the perfect mix to relax from bustling London. Here at the London Hilton, 28 stories above the city, visitors are afforded yet another view. Manager Jean-Robert Lawyer.
We are also fortunate that when Her Majesty has a residence in Buckingham Palace, we can see her walking the doggies in the lawn.
From any angle, whether peering into the backyard of Buckingham Palace from the Hilton on Park Lane or down on the River Thames, there's plenty to admire in this most majestic of cities.
Next on The Perfect Trip, roast beef cooked the way you like it, and a good spot of tea.
Simpson's in the Strand. Founded in the early 19th century, Simpson's restaurant is today as much of a British institution as the changing of the guard. And an institution such as this has its own special clientele.
Very English, very traditional. At lunchtime, it's basically people who come from the city and the West End, business people. And in the evening, we get people from all over the world. Whenever they come to London, one of the places they want to come to is Simpson's in the Strand.
Michael Williams has been Simpson's director and general manager since 1980, but some of the staff have been here a bit longer.
The first time I saw the Bloody Mary, it was Orson Welles that taught me how to do it.
Orson Welles?
I was just a young boy at the time, left on my own.
The restaurant still has the same club-like atmosphere as was conceived by John Simpson in 1848. It is this commitment to tradition that has generated such a loyal clientele. Many customers have been returning regularly for over 25 years. The menu at Simpson's hasn't changed much since the restaurant's beginning, nor has the preparation of some of its most famous dishes. In order to cater to all tastes, the roast beef is always cooked rare on one end and well done on the other. Roast beef as well as lamb are carved and served from trolleys. It's the same presentation that John Simpson introduced and now represents 70% of the restaurant's business.
It's an event for people to come to Simpson. And they come, whenever they're in London, they always come back again. I think it's something that is unique in the world. There is nowhere else quite like us, quite like Simpson.
The Pelham Hotel is a small luxury hotel in Cromwell Place. Here, another tradition is carried on: afternoon tea.
Afternoon tea used to be taken in England by everybody, which is why the British, I think, in Henry VIII's time were so large. Every afternoon, having had a huge breakfast, a huge lunch, and then at 4 o'clock, it was tea time.
Now, things are not quite the same, of course. Few people have time to stop what they're doing each day for tea time. But for those occasional free afternoons, it's important to know what a proper tea service consists of.
So tea always consists of sort of finger sandwiches, cakes, pastries, and more recently, something we call scones, which you have dolloped with Devonshire cream and sort of oodles of raspberry or strawberry jam. You usually finish with it all around your mouth, but it's a very delicious way of having afternoon tea.
People who want a more personal touch can actually take tea prepared in a private home. Those interested in this opportunity can contact Home Hosting through the British Tourist Board.
I thought there were so many visitors to London from all over the world. They would really relish the opportunity if we had regular teas so that they knew they could get into a private home on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays right through the year. So that's why we set it up.
Talk about where they come from, a little about themselves as well, because it's fun. We make friends, basically. And sometimes I explain about an English tea because it seems quite a novelty.
Anne-Marie Johnson prepares only English recipes during her afternoon teas. Everything she serves is homemade, and only organic food and free-range eggs are used.
Victoria sponge and a ginger cake. And this is nut cake and the other plain slices of fresh lemon.
Certainly, after an afternoon such as this, there is little room left for dinner. Those who want to have their own traditional afternoon teas can obtain supplies at shops like the Tea House. These tea shops buy high-quality teas which they package under their own name. Here, tea lovers can find a wide range of flavors from specialty blends to just plain fruit teas. The Tea House also carries all the accessories, such as infusers for loose-leaf teas. The selection of teapots is also enormous, from standard forms to offbeat novelty designs. Whittard of Chelsea has been distributing tea and coffee since 1886. They also have their own specialties, some of which are quite exotic.
Is that tea?
For those who aren't clear on what they want, Whittard can provide information concerning different tastes.
This tea here is a Darjeeling, which is from India. It's quite a small leaf, which means the leaves have been chopped up after they've been picked. This again is from India. It's an Assam, which gives a good, strong, malty taste. It's quite a classic tea. Here we have Earl Grey, which is a classic blend of Darjeeling and Keemun.
They say the English have always been able to work out their problems over a good cup of tea. As simple as it may seem, it's just these sorts of continuing traditions that add to this city's charm, stability, and grace.
In existence since 1066, and of course, with that period, of course, you've got wonderful history, and they could choose any history from 1066 here. But obviously, being a castle and called the Windsor Castle, we went for the royal family.
Welcome to London, and welcome to the night's pub tour with the Londoner.
Travelers interested in going on a guided tour of some of London's more fascinating and historical pubs can join the Londoner Pub Walks, led by Peter Westbrook.
I'll be telling you how to choose the beer when we go into the pubs, and I'll be answering your questions.
Mr. Westbrook's tour departs every Friday night at 7:30 from Temple Station, but the pubs visited depend on the tastes of the group.
So when I meet people on a Friday night for what I call a historic pub walk, I take into account what the weather's like, how many people, what sort of people, and from that I decide where to go on this particular night and try to get away from Hotel Land. This is the East End, or the beginning of the East End. Just down there, about as far as you can see, was Aldgate, one of the city gates.
Before entering a pub, Mr. Westbrook will prime the group to make sure they get the most out of the experience.
First of all, before we go in, I'm going to hope that you'll try an English-style beer. The rest of the world drink lager-style beers. Hopefully we'll get the governor to tell us a bit about the history of the place and why it's called the Alma. So follow me, in we go.
When Mr. Westbrook speaks about the governor, he's referring to the owner of the Alma, in this case, Steve Kane, a man who's been in the business over 25 years.
The pub was built in 1854, and it was built to celebrate the Battle of the Alma, which was the first victory that the British forces had in the Crimean War.
In the last century, the streets around the pub were fairly notorious. They also became renowned as the haunting ground of Jack the Ripper, who Steve says could well have had a pint or two in the Alma. Today, the Alma draws locals who just want a place where they can feel comfortable.
A neighbourhood pub is like an old-fashioned club. You can walk through the door, you can say hello to your mates, or not say hello to them. The choice is yours. But at least you know that you've got someone to keep you company.
What's also pleasing about the Alma is that it's a free house pub and serves any type of beer it chooses. 3/4 of the pubs in England are tied houses and must serve the beer to which they are tied or affiliated. After a pint or two and a goodbye from Mr. Kane, the group moves on. The St. George is the only coaching inn of its kind left in London. It now belongs to the National Trust.
It's a good example, in fact it's the only example in London of what we call a coaching inn. People met in an inn yard like this until there was a nice little group of them and they would set off together.
When London was still a walled city, there were 23 coaching inns on Borough Street. The only means in or out of London from the south was through this bustling area and over London Bridge.
In the coaching inn days, you can imagine the coach arriving here and the luggage being heaved off. And this would have been a whole scene of bustle and excitement.
Another sort of traditional pub of which very few remain is the Quinton Hog. Before jukeboxes, almost all pubs had a piano. The Quinton Hog is a throwback to that time.
This is a good example of the sort of pub we had years ago, where people turn up and thoroughly enjoy themselves. They just sing, and all you need is a pianist and some voices.
Here's hoping that there's a trip to London in your future. And like ours, it will be the perfect trip.